In episode 2, Tim wakes up, he heads downstairs in the hotel, and Norbert lets him know that Officer Gullickson wants him to come into the station immediately. So Tim heads there to find out that Gullickson wants him to be on the alert about a group of people that have been going up and down Maine, and they've been robbing banks, and all indications are they're headed to the area. And they probably would hit up a spot at night, and since he's the night cop, it makes sense to let him know. She also asks him if he wants a weapon, but he says, no, I'm okay. Because either he doesn't think it's a big deal or he really, really, really believes in his set of skills. The good news for Tim, though, is she is a little nicer to him this time and gives him a suggestion on where he can get coffee. When he heads out to the police station, though, he sees a kerfuffle going on between Annie and a woman in the town named Mrs. Sloan. Annie's been known to harass Mrs. Sloan, who lost her daughter, and Annie has a conspiracy theory about the fact that what happened to her daughter, which was a drowning accident in a quarry, wasn't actually an accident. As you can imagine, this is really upsetting to Mrs. Sloan, but Tim, who sees the kerfuffle going on, doesn't know the backstory. He just jumps into action and tries to de-escalate the situation by getting Annie to come with him to go get some coffee at this diner. And that's when Drew drives up. Because the commotion did get the attention of the police, he was the active officer, and let's just say he is not as nice to Annie as Tim is. He's annoyed by Annie. He's strictly on Mrs. Sloan's side. And when Annie blows off Tim for this coffee date and walks away, Drew looks at Tim and goes, do you have any idea what you're doing? I mean, you're going to buddy up to the town kook? How about you actually side with the woman who's the victim in this situation, Mrs. Sloan, and just keep these two apart? Although Drew doesn't elaborate into what actually happened between the two. No, Tim doesn't find that out until he actually comes into the station later that night to start his shift, and Officer Gullickson lets him know about the drama between Annie and Mrs. Sloan. She lets him know how Mrs. Sloan's daughter ended up going to this rock quarry with friends, and it was a known thing. You don't swim in the quarry, and nobody really knows exactly what happened, but either way, it resulted in Mrs. Sloan's daughter passing away. And Annie wasn't even in the town at the time, but she cooked up this conspiracy theory. Gullickson does inquire as to why Tim is so friendly with Annie, and he reveals that his mom is a lot like Annie. She had mental issues, and it was kind of on him to take care of her. So he feels for Annie. He also tells Gullickson about the fact that Annie knew what his mom called him when he was a kid, but she kind of just brushes that off as saying, oh yeah, she says some crazy stuff sometimes. But Tim has every intention of going to check on Annie later that night, and he does. He finds Annie, and she seems to be okay. She seems to have forgotten the incident earlier that day even happened. She's playing a musical instrument that she found from the trash, and she says, my sister used to be able to play this, but she wouldn't have been able to tell you what's going on in that institute up there and what they're actually doing with it. And before Tim can even ask what exactly she's talking about, shots ring out, so Tim jumps into cop action. The shots are coming from a local gas station, and it turns out that Tim was actually there a little while earlier grabbing coffee. He met the owner. The owner's a really good guy. His name's Mr. DeBira. He's an immigrant who views what he's doing as living the American dream in Maine. But unfortunately that night, he was held up at gunpoint, and Tim arrives on the scene, but he doesn't have a weapon. And the assailants flee. Tim essentially chases them away with nothing more than a flashlight. He calls in the incident, and then he checks in on what exactly they took, and that's when he sees that Mr. DeBira has been shot. So he calls that in as well. Tim shows off why he won awards with the Boston Police Department. I mean, he jumps into action. He is a cool and calm customer, unlike Drew, who shows up and is so shook at what he's viewing that it takes him a while to actually jump into action and make some phone calls to get an ambulance at the location. But Tim completely controls the entire thing, and he ends up saving Mr. DeBira's life. It's really impressive to the chief. But as for the Institute, well, that day Luke woke up to Mrs. Sigsby acting like it was a birthday party. And it's not, but it is a going away party for Iris. She's going to back half. And all the kids are brought into a room, and they have to sing and act like this is a good thing. Iris is almost home, but everybody looks miserable, including Iris. She doesn't want to leave her friends. Nikki goes over and holds Iris's hand to try to make her feel better, and that makes Kalisha feel a certain way. I mean, Kalisha knows that Iris really likes Nikki, and Luke asks her, hey, are you and Nikki like an item? And Kalisha admits, I don't even know. I mean, I've only known him for 2 weeks, but it definitely seems like she would like to be, and there's a little jealousy setting in. Shortly thereafter, though, everybody does say goodbye to Iris officially, and she's escorted out to go to back half. For Sigsbee and Stackhouse, however, when the party ends, they need to go call their financier, their boss, whoever is actually in charge, and let them know about what happened with the journalist turned assassin who took out the wannabe rat. Sigsbee gives the rundown on what happened and how the vetting procedure needs to get amped, obviously. But when Stackhouse talks up, he kind of throws Sigsbee under the bus. He takes a lot of credit for the fact that it was his idea to bring along this reporter, and because of it, they found a possible loose end. It's the guy on the other end of the phone that actually wonders if this reporter could take over the job of being the, quote, snatch team leader, the person who actually kidnaps the kids, because they do need more kids. And everybody agrees that for the meantime, yeah, she would work out. But once they hang up with this guy, Sigsbee takes umbrage with the fact that Stackhouse did throw her under the bus to him. She appreciates the fact that Stackhouse took measures like turning a reporter, but what she doesn't appreciate is what he said to her boss. It makes her look bad. At one point, they talk about people that could compromise. And Stackhouse tells her, I don't think you would compromise. I mean, I know you want it, but it's not because I trust you. But it's because that you know that I know that if any of this ever comes out, you'll be just as screwed as the rest of us. Now, while that conference call was going on, Luke was having to get ready for his first test with the dots. The dots is one of the earliest tests you do. Dr. Hendricks and Tony shoot you up with something that's supposed to heighten your abilities, and when you see the dots, you're supposed to say it. It's difficult, though, for those that are doing it for the first time, especially when you're dealing with a guy like Tony. Initially, when sitting in the chair, Luke tries to get under the doctor's skin by questioning why exactly he's doing what he's doing. I mean, didn't you take some oaths? But the doctor's heard this stuff before. He's not really fazed by it at all. He's there to do a job. And after hooking Luke up to all the machines and injecting him with God knows what, you do see the effects. I mean, it is taking a toll on Luke, but he's not able to actually move anything in the room. So they bump it up even more. And again, you see the effects on Luke. Like, he really, really seems like he's in rough shape. But he is able to move a metal tray. When he's finally done, he's escorted upstairs back to the common area by Maureen, who seems like she feels for the kid. She knows that the first time is rough, and she gives him some tips, like, you gotta eat. The first person he sees after getting in the cafeteria is Nikki, who right away tells him what his experience was like the first time that he was shot up to, quote, see the dots. But then they see who's really struggling, and that's George. George was put in something called the Dream Box. It's the final test in front half, and when you ace it, you move to back half. From what Nikki's told, the Dream Box shows you every bad thing that has ever happened to you. It's like your own personal horror movie, and the only way to make it stop is by lining up the lights. Nikki and Luke then head outside because they want to discuss more how exactly they're going to get out of the place, and Luke has given it some thought. He figures that getting into the security cameras, that's not going to work. You need a Wi-Fi jammer. Now, the easiest way to do it is to find a weak link, because every place has them. Every place has somebody who will be willing to help out the inmates because they either want to rebel or they don't agree with what's going on or whatever. But in order to do that, you're going to need somebody with telepathy, and really, really strong telepathy, in order to read that person's mind. Kalisha's not strong enough. And the average person spends about 50 days in front half, so without a miracle, they're kind of running out of time to find that person. Luke, though, then gets distracted by a building, it seems to be on the property, that is emitting some dark material, and he says, hey, Nikki, what exactly is that? And Nikki tells him, yeah, nobody knows. It happens like every week. Another thing that might happen every week or every day is Miss Sigsbee and Dr. Hendricks hooking up in one of the closets, but let's just say it is not like these two are in love or even have a relationship. It is very robotic and awkward, but Dr. Hendricks is absolutely clapping them cheeks. When the day wraps up, though, after clapping said cheeks, Dr. Hendricks goes to leave, but he's approached by Stackhouse, who wants to have a word with him. He tells him that it's probably one more dream session for George, and then he moves on, and Stackhouse says that's great. We're going to need him with all the keyholes we've got coming up. He then gets an update on Luke and his first testing, and Stackhouse points out that because Luke is so smart, it might make him even more valuable. But right away, the doctor pushes back on that and reminds Stackhouse that his job is simply to boost his TP ability. What Stackhouse is proposing to the doctor is something called a PC. It's what he initially proposed to Sigsbee because Luke is so smart, and Sigsbee just shooed it away. He proposes it to the doctor to look out for the signs, but the doctor says not only is that outside of our mission, I'm also aware that there are other facilities that are tasked with that sort of thing. Stackhouse, though, doesn't give up. He literally walks Hendricks home, continuing to pitch this idea of scanning Luke for PC. He tells the doctor that Sigsbee's only directive is to keep the conveyor belt moving, stay ahead of the keyholes. But he thinks there's another perspective that he and the doctor share, and that takes in the almost incalculable value of identifying individuals' genuine PC potential. Dr. Hendricks tells him, yeah, me and you might share that, but I've been told by Sigsbee that the Institute group does not. Stackhouse tells him, no, she's right about that, but there are multiple parties, all willing to funnel astronomical sums of money to whoever can provide them with that advantage. So what you should do is continue to do what you're doing, but find a kid with PC potential and develop it. And by the way, watch the pillow talk because you don't need to tell Sigsbee about this. What they're unaware of, though, is the fact that Sigsbee is overhearing some of the conversation. She's literally eavesdropping on it, so she knows something is going on between these two. Back in the Institute, though, while heading to the common area, Luke notices that they're getting a new kid. He's going to be a lot younger than the other ones, at least that's what it looks like from the room, and his name is Avery. He tells Nikki and Kalisha about this during a game of ping pong where they know the cameras can't reach them. And the reason they know that is because Maureen told them. Luke and Kalisha believe that Maureen is on their side and they trust her, whereas Nikki doesn't trust anybody in the Institute that isn't in that room. And that includes George, whose Dreambox work earlier has upped his telekinesis, so much so that he was able to pillage a bunch of snacks from the machine using a coin, and then he would just eject the coin constantly. Everybody in the room's eating good that night. That's the point. Late that night, though, they end up meeting Avery for the first time, when they're awoken by him crying. He, just like everybody else, woke up, and at first he was okay, but then he noticed he's not in his home. And he is just in the fetal position in the hallway crying, and that's when everybody comes to his aid. They start checking on him, but he's able to talk to Kalisha using telepathy. And once George escorts him off to go get some candy and just make him feel better about the situation, Kalisha lets Nikki and Luke know that this kid is super, super powerful. She compares her telepathy to a D1 bench player, whereas this kid is Michael Jordan, which means that this kid, this Avery kid, is exactly who Nikki and Luke have been looking for. Prayers have been answered.
Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry. It'll be up in a day or two.